The hospital waiting room at Mercy General smelled like failure. Antiseptic, stale coffee, and beneath it all, the faint metallic tang of fear that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. Lily Monroe sat in a plastic chair that had been molded for a body that wasn't hers, her spine curved at an angle that would leave her aching tomorrow, if tomorrow mattered, if there was a tomorrow where her sister still existed in the world. The fluorescent lights above hummed their monotonous song, flickering occasionally as if they too were tired of bearing witness to human suffering. 11:43 p.m. She'd been here for 6 hours. 6 hours of watching the second hand crawl around the clock face mounted opposite her, each rotation a small eternity. Her laptop sat open on her knees, a stack of third-grade book reports waiting for her attention. She'd read the same paragraph 4 times now. My favorite animal is a dolphin because they are smart and nice and they smile. The words blurred together, meaningless. She couldn't remember the student's name, couldn't remember if she'd already graded this one, or if exhaustion had simply erased the memory. The coffee in her paper cup had gone cold an hour ago. She drank it anyway. The bitterness was something to focus on, something that wasn't the closed surgical doors at the end of the hallway, or the way her phone sat silent in her pocket, heavy as a stone. Emma was 19 years old, and somewhere beyond those doors, surgeons were fighting to save a kidney that had been failing for 8 months. 8 months of dialysis and declining function, and insurance companies with their polite voices and implacable denials. 8 months of watching her baby sister grow paler, thinner, her bright spirit dimming like a candle in a room slowly filling with water. Lily closed the laptop. She couldn't pretend anymore. Her parents would have known what to do. Her father with his quiet strength, her mother with her unshakable faith that everything happened for a reason. But they'd been gone 3 years now, taken by a drunk driver on a Tuesday evening, and Lily had learned the hard way that sometimes things happened for no reason at all. Sometimes the universe was just cruel. She'd promised them, in the confusion and grief of those first terrible days, that she would take care of Emma, that her sister would finish high school, go to college, live the life their parents had sacrificed so much to build. She'd promised. The debt had started small, a few thousand for the initial appointments, the specialists, the tests, then tens of thousands, then a number so large it had stopped feeling real. $127,000. She'd borrowed from everyone. Her teacher's salary of $42,000 a year barely covered her studio apartment and groceries, let alone medical bills that multiplied like cancer. And now this, the kidney infection that had landed Emma in emergency surgery. Another crisis, another bill she couldn't pay. But there was something worse than the debt, worse than the fear. It was the knowledge, delivered 2 weeks ago by a doctor who couldn't quite meet her eyes, that Emma needed an experimental treatment, a treatment that could save her life, could give her years instead of months. $850,000, not covered by insurance, needed within 8 weeks or the damage would become irreversible. Lily had laughed when he'd said the number, actually laughed, a sound that had frightened her with its edge of hysteria. She might as well needed 8 million, 8 billion. The number was impossible either way. "I would do anything," she'd whispered to the empty waiting room, her voice cracking. "Sell anything, become anything." The surgical doors swung open. Lily shot to her feet, her laptop clattering to the floor. Dr. Patel emerged, still in his scrubs, his surgical cap leaving a red line across his forehead. His face was tired, but not grief-stricken, not the face of a man about to deliver devastating news. "She's stable," he said, and Lily's knees nearly buckled with relief. "The infection was aggressive, but we got it in time. She'll need to stay for observation, but she should make a full recovery from this particular crisis." This particular crisis. The words hung in the air between them. However, Dr. Patel continued, his voice gentle but firm, her kidney function has declined significantly. If we don't move forward with the treatment we discussed, I'd estimate she has less than 6 months before complete renal failure. 6 months. 8 weeks ago, it had been 8 months. Time was accelerating, slipping through her fingers like water. I understand, Lily managed. Her voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. Thank you, doctor. He left her there, alone with the humming lights and the impossible weight of reality. Lily gathered her laptop with shaking hands. It was nearly 1 in the morning. She should go home, try to sleep. But sleep felt like a luxury she hadn't earned, a respite she didn't deserve when Emma was lying in a hospital bed with time running out. Instead, she found herself in the hospital cafeteria, open 24 hours for the desperate and the grieving. She bought another coffee she wouldn't drink and sat at a table in the corner, opening her laptop again. The search bar glowed white and expectant. Her fingers hovered over the keys. Then, feeling ridiculous and desperate and completely out of options, she typed, "How to make $800,000 in 6 weeks." The results were predictably useless. Lottery tickets, investment schemes, one article about a woman who'd sold her hair for $3,000. Lily touched her honey blonde waves self-consciously. Even if she shaved herself bald, it wouldn't make a dent. She scrolled further, past the scams and the impossible dreams. And then she saw it. A small article, barely more than a blog post, about alternative family planning. Surrogacy can provide compensation ranging from $50,000 to $80,000. 50, 80,000. Still not enough, but something real. Her heart began to pound as she clicked through to surrogacy agencies, application processes that took months, medical screenings, psychological evaluations, legal contracts. Even if she started tomorrow, Emma didn't have that kind of time. She was about to close the laptop when an advertisement caught her eye. It was small, discreet, and something about it felt different from the professional agencies. Seeking healthy woman for exclusive biological arrangement, significant compensation for the right candidate, discretion essential. There was a phone number, nothing else. Lily stared at it until her vision blurred. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, potentially illegal, absolutely insane. But sitting in that fluorescent-lit cafeteria, with her sister fighting for life upstairs, and time running out like sand through an hourglass, insanity felt like the only rational option left. Her hand was shaking as she pulled out her phone. The number seemed to glow on the screen, a door to something she couldn't take back. She dialed before she could lose her courage. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, a woman's voice answered, professional and crisp despite the hour. Hawthorne of Noble, private line. Lily's breath caught. Hawthorne Global. She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. One of the largest tech and pharmaceutical conglomerates in the country. Her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat. I'm calling about the arrangement, the advertisement? A pause. Then, I see. May I have your name? Lily Monroe. And you understand the nature of what's being requested, Ms. Monroe? I think so. The ad mentioned biological services? Yes. The woman's voice remained neutral, giving nothing away. Mr. Hawthorne has very specific requirements. This would be a private arrangement, legally binding, with substantial compensation for the right candidate. Mr. Hawthorne? Lily's mind raced. Julian Hawthorne. She'd seen his face in business magazines, always unsmiling, always impeccably dressed, cold gray eyes that seemed to look through rather than at the camera. How substantial? Lily asked, hating how desperate she sounded. That would be discussed in person. Would you be available for a meeting tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? Tomorrow morning? In less than 8 hours? This was moving too fast, way too fast. She should say no, should hang up and forget this number existed. Yes, Lily heard herself say. "I can be there." The woman gave her an address, the Hawthorne Global Building, 60th floor, executive level. When Lily hung up, her hands were trembling so badly she nearly dropped the phone. Across town, in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that never truly slept, Julian Hawthorne stared at a background check on his computer screen. Lily Monroe, 28 years old, elementary school teacher, no criminal record, substantial medical debt, one dependent, Emma Monroe, 19, stage 4 kidney disease. His assistant had flagged her call within minutes. Now Julian studied the woman's photo. Driver's license quality, but clear enough. Soft features, kind eyes. She looked exactly like what she was. Ordinary, unremarkable, perfect. "She's desperate," he said to the empty office. "Desperate enough to complicate things." He closed the file and looked out at the glittering city below. Somewhere down there, Lily Monroe was making a choice that would change everything. He just hoped she understood there would be no going back. The morning of the meeting arrived wrapped in the kind of cold that seeped through fabric and settled in bones. Lily stood outside the Hawthorne Global Tower at 8:45, 15 minutes early because desperation had robbed her of the ability to be fashionably late. The building stretched upward like a monument to ambition, all glass and steel and the kind of money that didn't bother counting zeros. She wore her only professional dress, black and simple, purchased 3 years ago for her parents' funeral. The hem had started to fray. She'd tried to hide it with careful stitching last night, her hands shaking so badly she'd pricked her finger twice. Now, standing among people in clothes that cost more than her monthly rent, she felt every thread of her inadequacy. The lobby was cathedral-like in its vastness, marble floors polished to a mirror shine, modern art that probably cost more than Emma's entire treatment. A security guard directed her to a private elevator, the kind that required a key card. He provided one, temporary, and the look he gave her was professionally blank, but somehow knowing, as if he'd seen dozens of desperate women take this elevator before. The ride to the 60th floor felt both instantaneous and eternal. Her reflection in the polished doors showed a woman who looked terrified. She tried to arrange her features into something more confident, failed miserably. The doors opened directly into a reception area that screamed quiet power. A woman sat behind a desk of dark wood, her silver hair cut in a sharp bob, her expression politely impenetrable. "Ms. Monroe, right on time. Mr. Hawthorne will see you now." No waiting, no time to gather her courage or run screaming back to the elevator. The woman led her down a hallway lined with photographs of buildings, laboratories, hospitals, all bearing the Hawthorne name. A legacy built in glass and steel and pharmaceutical breakthroughs. The office at the end was exactly what she'd expected, and somehow more. Windows that offered the city like a gift, furniture that looked sculptural, as if sitting was merely a secondary function to aesthetics. And behind a desk that could have doubled as a landing strip, Julian Hawthorne. He was taller than she'd imagined, broader. The photographs hadn't captured the way he occupied space, the sense of controlled power that radiated from him like heat. His suit was dark gray, perfectly tailored, and probably cost more than she made in 6 months. His eyes, when they met hers, were the color of winter storms. "Ms. Monroe." His voice was low, smooth, utterly devoid of warmth. "Please, sit." She sat in the chair across from him, her purse clutched in her lap like a shield. On the desk between them lay a document, multiple pages bound in leather. It looked official, binding, terrifying. "I appreciate your promptness," Julian continued, his gaze never leaving her face. "I assume you understand why you're here." The advertisement mentioned biological services, Lily managed. Her throat felt dry. And compensation. "Yes." He slid the document across the desk toward her. "This is a contract. I suggest you read it carefully before we proceed." Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The first page was dense with legal language, but certain phrases jumped out like knives. Biological child via in vitro fertilization. Full custody to Julian Hawthorne upon birth. Confidentiality agreement with substantial penalties for breach. And there, near the bottom of the second page, a number that made her vision blur. $1 million. She read it again, certain she'd misunderstood. But no, $1 million, paid in 2 installments. $850,000 up front upon contract signing and successful embryo implantation, $150,000 upon delivery. "I don't understand," she whispered. "This is more than you expected." His expression remained unreadable. "I'm aware surrogacy typically compensates far less, but this is not a typical arrangement. I need absolute discretion. No complications, no emotional entanglements. You would undergo IVF, carry the pregnancy to term, and sign away all parental rights immediately upon birth. In return, you receive the compensation outlined." Lily's mind reeled. This was insane. This was a solution delivered from some desperate fever dream. This was Emma, living instead of dying. Why me? The question came out before she could stop it. There must be dozens of women who'd agree to this. Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. "You need money urgently. Your sister's medical situation provides motivation without the risk of extortion. You have no connections to my social circle, no access to media outlets, and frankly, Miss Monroe, you look exactly like what you are, an ordinary woman in extraordinary circumstances. That's precisely what I need." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like relief. He was right. She was ordinary, unremarkable, and right now, that was her greatest asset. "There are terms," Julian continued, sliding another page across the desk. "Medical examinations to ensure you're a suitable candidate, psychological evaluation, regular monitoring throughout the pregnancy. You would maintain your current life, your job, with the understanding that the child's paternity remains confidential until birth. And after?" Her voice sounded distant. "After the baby is born, you walk away. The NDA extends indefinitely. You never contact me or the child. In exchange, you receive the remainder of your compensation and your life returns to normal, with your sister healthy and your debt eliminated." He said it so clinically, as if they were discussing a business merger instead of a human life. But Lily supposed that's exactly what this was to him. Business, a transaction, a solution to whatever problem required him to have a biological child while maintaining emotional distance. She should ask why, should demand to know what kind of man needed to purchase an heir like ordering office supplies. But looking at his cold gray eyes, she knew he wouldn't answer. And truthfully, with Emma's life hanging in the balance, she wasn't sure she cared. "The $850,000 up front," she said slowly. "When would that be available?" "Upon successful implantation, the embryo transfer would occur within 2 weeks if you're medically cleared. The funds would be wired the same day confirmation of pregnancy is established." 2 weeks. Emma had 8 weeks before irreversible damage. This could work. This could actually work. "I need to make a stipulation," Lily said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "The $850,000 up front, I need it immediately upon implantation, not confirmation of pregnancy. My sister's treatment can't wait for the 2-week confirmation window." Julian's eyes narrowed slightly, the first real reaction she'd seen from him. He studied her for a long moment, and she had the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated, weighed, measured, against some internal scale. "Agreed," he said finally. "The full upfront amount upon successful implantation procedure. The medical risks are mine to bear if the pregnancy doesn't take." He stood, extending his hand across the desk. Lily stared at it. His hand was large, long fingers, immaculately manicured, the hand of a man who'd never known a day of real work in his life. She thought of her own hands, rough from chalk dust and washing dishes, the nails cut short because anything else was impractical. She took his hand. The contact was electric, unexpected. His palm was warm, his grip firm, but not crushing. For a fraction of a second, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe? Or the acknowledgement that they were both stepping off a cliff together. Then he released her hand and the moment dissolved. "My attorney will meet us at the fertility clinic this afternoon," Julian said, already moving toward the door, the matter settled in his mind. 2 o'clock. The address is on the card. He handed her a small white card with an address embossed in gold. Everything about him was polished, perfect, completely controlled. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said as he reached for the door handle. He paused, glancing back. Why is this so important to you? $1 million is none of your concern. You're providing a service. I'm providing compensation. The motivations behind either are irrelevant to the arrangement. He opened the door, dismissing her as efficiently as he'd summoned her. Lily walked back to the elevator in a daze, the contract clutched in her hands. In the lobby, she found a corner and called Emma's hospital room. Lil? Her sister's voice was weak but warm. How'd the meeting go? The mysterious job interview you wouldn't tell me about. Lily closed her eyes, hating the lie, hating herself. Good. Really good. I think I got it. That's amazing. What kind of job? Consulting work. Temporary, but really well paid. Enough to cover everything, Em. The silence on the other end was loaded. Then, quietly, everything. Emma's sob was relief and disbelief tangled together. Lily, I don't know what you did, but don't. Lily interrupted gently. Just get better, okay? That's all I need. After she hung up, Lily sat in that corporate lobby and let herself feel the weight of what she'd just agreed to. She was going to carry a stranger's child, going to grow a life inside her and hand it over like a package, going to lie to everyone she loved about the most intimate experience a woman could have. But Emma would live, and in the end, wasn't that the only thing that mattered? The clinic was in a medical building that catered to the wealthy, all soft lighting and comfortable furniture, and receptionists who spoke in hushed, respectful tones. Julian arrived exactly at 2, accompanied by a man he introduced as Dr. Raymond Cross, his attorney. Raymond was warmer than Julian, with kind eyes and an easy smile that felt genuine. He walked Lily through the contract again, explaining every clause, making sure she understood what she was agreeing to. This is binding, he said gently. Once you sign, there's no changing your mind. Julian gets full custody. You have no legal rights to the child. I understand. And you're certain this is what you want? She thought of Emma's pale face, the way her sister had stopped talking about the future because she'd stopped believing she had one. Yes, the medical. Clinical examination was clinical, impersonal. The doctor explained the IVF process, the hormone treatments she'd need, the timeline for embryo transfer. Through it all, Julian sat in the waiting room, reading something on his phone, as detached as if he were waiting for a car wash. When the genetic compatibility testing required them both in the same room, the awkwardness was suffocating. They sat in chairs positioned too close together, not speaking, not looking at each other. Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and Lily saw the name flash before he silenced it. Victoria. The call went unanswered, but something in his jaw tightened. Previous girlfriend? Lily asked before she could stop herself. His eyes cut to her, sharp and warning. None of your concern. Right, sorry. But she'd seen something in his reaction. This Victoria, whoever she was, mattered. Or had mattered. Maybe still did. On the doctor's desk, she noticed a file folder, partially open. Inside, she could see medical records, not hers. The tab read, IVF attempt 4, failed. 4 failed attempts. This wasn't Julian's first time trying this. She was just the latest candidate in what had apparently been a string of failures. You're staring, Julian said coldly. Just wondering, Lily said quietly, why this matters so much, why it's worth $1 million. His expression closed like a door slamming shut. That's none of your concern, Ms. Monroe. Your job is to carry my child, not to psychoanalyze my motivations. The cruelty in his voice should have hurt. Instead, it clarified everything. This was business, nothing more. She needed to remember that. They were leaving the clinic when the flash of cameras exploded around them. Paparazzi, 3 of them, appearing from nowhere. Mr. Hawthorne, who's your companion? Is this your new girlfriend? What about Victoria Hastings? Julian's hand clamped around Lily's arm, pulling her toward his car with controlled urgency. His driver appeared, blocking the photographers, as Julian practically pushed Lily into the back seat. Inside the car, sealed away from the chaos, Julian was furious. His jaw worked, his hands clenched into fists. This cannot happen, he bit out. If the press connects you to me, they'll dig into your background. They'll find Emma, the medical debt, the timing. They'll destroy you and complicate everything. His phone rang again. Raymond. They know something, Julian said by way of greeting. Then, listening, Victoria, of course. His eyes closed briefly. Then we changed strategy. He hung up and turned to Lily, his expression calculating. How would you feel about playing a different role? Lily's heart began to pound. What do you mean? Surrogates are legally complicated. Victoria knows about the will, about the inheritance requirements. She can challenge a surrogacy arrangement, tie it up in courts for years. But a wife? He let the word hang between them. Absolutely not. Hear me out. Married for 18 months. Pregnancy looks natural, unplanned. After the baby is born, quiet divorce. I'll double the payment. $2 million. $2 million, and Emma would never have to worry about medical bills again, would have money for college, for life. I need 24 hours, Lily whispered. You have 12. Victoria moves fast. Her phone buzzed. Text from the hospital. Treatment slot opening in 5 days if funds available. 5 days, not 8 weeks. 5 days. Lily looked at Julian Hawthorne, at his cold gray eyes and perfect suit, and the desperation he was trying so hard to hide beneath arrogance. I'll do it, she heard her say, but I have conditions. Something that might have been respect flickered across his face. Name them. Lily stood at Emma's hospital bedside at 2 a.m, watching her sister sleep. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, the IV dripped its slow salvation, and Lily tried to convince herself that what she was about to do wasn't insane. Marriage. Not surrogacy. Marriage. The word felt foreign in her mouth, like speaking a language she'd never learned. She thought of her parents' marriage, the way her father would kiss her mother's forehead every morning before work, the way they'd held hands even after 25 years. That was marriage. Not this. Not a transaction wrapped in legal documents and expiration dates. Emma stirred, her eyes fluttering open. Lil, you look terrible. What's wrong? Everything. Nothing. The space between saving you and losing myself. Just work stress, Lily lied, the words ash on her tongue. Emma's hand, thin and cold, found hers. You know what Mom used to say? Sometimes the wrong path is the only one that leads home. The memory hit Lily like a physical blow. Their mother, standing in the kitchen after their father had taken a job he hated to pay for Emma's braces. The same expression Lily probably wore now. Love and sacrifice and the terrible mathematics of choosing between bad options. Get some sleep, Em. Lily kissed her sister's forehead, breathing in the antiseptic smell of hospital soap. Everything's going to be okay. She left before Emma could see her cry. The address Julian had given her led to a building in the part of the city where wealth whispered instead of shouted. The penthouse took up the entire top floor. Lily buzzed the intercom at 3 a.m., certain he'd be asleep, half hoping he would be so she could delay this conversation, this decision, this moment of no return. He answered immediately. 60th floor. The elevator ride felt like ascending to another world. When the doors opened directly into his apartment, Lily stepped into a space that confirmed everything she'd suspected about Julian Hawthorne. It was beautiful and cold, all clean lines and expensive furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered the city like a painting, distant and untouchable. The space felt less like a home and more like a very luxurious waiting room. Julian stood by those windows, still dressed despite the hour. He'd removed his jacket, rolled his sleeves to his elbows. It was the most casual she'd seen him, and somehow it made him more intimidating, not less, more real. I'll do it, Lily said before she lost her courage. The marriage, but I have conditions. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. Name them. She'd rehearsed this in the taxi, practicing the words until they felt solid. Emma never knows the truth. As far as she's concerned, we met, fell in love, rushed into marriage. She's a romantic. She'll believe it. Agreed. Public respect. I won't be treated like a mistress or an embarrassment. Whatever we are in private, in public, I'm your wife. Agreed. Separate bedrooms. This is a business arrangement. I won't, she faltered, heat rising in her cheeks. I won't pretend otherwise in private. Something flickered in his eyes too quick to identify. Agreed. Anything else? I keep teaching until the pregnancy becomes obvious. My students are important to me. My job is important to me. Of course. He moved toward the kitchen, poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher that probably cost more than her monthly rent, handed her one. Is that everything? She sipped the water, buying time. Why does the inheritance matter so much? You're already wealthy. Why go through all this for money you don't need? For a long moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. He stood there, glass in hand, staring out at the city with an expression that looked almost vulnerable, almost human. My grandfather, he said finally, his voice low, he built Hawthorne Global from nothing. Emigrant, couldn't speak English, started with a corner store in Brooklyn, worked himself half to death to create something that mattered, something that would last. He took a drink, his throat working. When I was 12, his business partner betrayed him, stole patents, clients, nearly destroyed everything he'd built. My grandfather had a heart attack, died believing he'd failed. Lily's breath caught at the raw pain in his voice. I rebuilt it, Julian continued. Took 20 years, but I rebuilt everything he lost and more. The trust fund contains the original patents, the properties he purchased before the betrayal. It's not about the money. It's about making his sacrifice mean something, proving his legacy survived. He turned to face her, and his eyes were no longer cold. They were haunted. My grandfather, he said finally, his voice low, he built Hawthorne Global from nothing. Emigrant, couldn't speak English, started with a corner store in Brooklyn, worked himself half to death to create something that mattered, something that would last. He took a drink, his throat working. When I was 12, his business partner betrayed him, stole patents, clients, nearly destroyed everything he'd built. My grandfather had a heart attack, died believing he'd failed. Lily's breath caught at the raw pain in his voice. I rebuilt it, Julian continued. Took 20 years, but I rebuilt everything he lost and more. The trust fund contains the original patents, the properties he purchased before the betrayal. It's not about the money. It's about making his sacrifice mean something, proving his legacy survived. He turned to face her, and his eyes were no longer cold. They were haunted. My grandfather's will stipulated I must have a biological child by my 36th birthday to unlock the trust. 13 months from now, he wanted to ensure the family line continued, that everything he built would have someone to inherit it. I understand legacy, Lily said quietly. My parents died 3 years ago, car accident. Their last words to me were about Emma. Make sure she graduates, make sure she's happy, make sure she lives. Her voice cracked. I'm just keeping a promise. The silence that followed felt different than before, not empty, but full of understanding. 2 people bound by the ghosts of those they'd loved and lost. Then we're agreed, Julian said. Marriage. 18 months minimum. After the baby is born and the inheritance is secured, quiet divorce. You get $2 million and your freedom. $2 million? The numbers still didn't feel real. When? 3 days. I've arranged a private ceremony. City Hall, minimal witnesses. 3 days? Her voice rose. Julian, that's necessary. Victoria is already filing legal challenges to any surrogacy arrangement. The moment we're married, her claim evaporates. She can't contest a legitimate marriage and pregnancy. He moved closer, and Lily caught the scent of expensive cologne and something underneath it, something cedar and smoke. There's one more complication. My board. They'll expect a story, a history. We don't have one, so we create one. His voice was matter-of-fact, as if lying to an entire board of directors was as simple as ordering lunch. 6 months ago, charity gala for children's literacy. We met, kept it private, whirlwind romance. No one will believe you fell for a teacher, Lily said flatly. Then we make them believe. He stepped closer still, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. We need to practice. Practice what? Looking like we're in love. His hand found her waist, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. If we're in public, I might touch you like this. Lily's breath caught. Her heart was hammering so hard she was certain he could feel it. Julian, we need to be convincing. His other hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. He leaned in, his lips inches from hers, his breath warm against her skin. For a moment that stretched into eternity, Lily thought he might kiss her, wanted him to kiss her, which was insane because this was business, just business, and she couldn't afford to confuse transaction with emotion. Then he pulled back, his expression once again perfectly controlled. That should suffice. You're easier to read than I expected. The spell broke. Lily stepped back, her cheeks burning with humiliation and something she refused to name. And you're exactly as cold as I expected. She grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator, needing distance, needing air, needing to remember why she was doing this. Lily. She turned, her hand on the elevator button. He stood in the center of that cold, perfect apartment, and for just a moment, he looked lost. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for doing this, for agreeing." It was the first time he'd used her first name. The sound of it in his voice did something to her chest, something warm and dangerous. "You're welcome," she managed, and fled before she could do something stupid like stay. The next 2 days passed in a blur of paperwork and lies. Lily told Emma she'd met someone, that it was fast, really fast, but he was helping them, helping with the medical bills, with everything. Emma, despite her illness, lit up like Christmas morning. "Tell me everything. What's his name? What does he do? How did you meet?" Lily spun the story Julian had created, each word feeling like a small betrayal. The charity gala, the instant connection, the way he'd made her laugh. All lies, built on a foundation of desperation and circumstance. But when she described how he'd offered to help with Emma's treatment, that part was true. And Emma, sweet Emma, who still believed in fairy tales despite everything life had thrown at her, bought it completely. "I'm so happy for you, Lil," she whispered, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. "You deserve this. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are." Lily held her sister and tried not to think about how none of this was real. Natalie was harder to convince. Lily's best friend had known her since college, had seen her through the worst moments of her life. She cornered Lily at school during lunch break, her dark eyes sharp with concern. "Something's wrong," Natalie said flatly. "You're marrying a man you've known for 6 months. Except I don't remember you dating anyone. You never mentioned him once." "We kept it private," Lily said, the lie tasting worse each time she told it. He's wealthy, prominent. We wanted to be sure before going public. And he's just coincidentally paying for Emma's treatment? He cares about me. He wants to help." Natalie stared at her for a long moment. Then, quietly, "What did you do, Lily?" "I'm saving my sister." "At what cost?" "Everything. Nothing. Pieces of my soul I hope I can find again. Nat, I need you to trust me, and I need you to be there, at the ceremony, please." Because she needed someone in that room who actually knew her, who could anchor her to reality when she signed her name on documents that would change everything. Natalie pulled her into a fierce hug. "I'll be there, but if he hurts you, rich or not, I will end him." The morning of the wedding arrived cold and gray, the sky threatening rain. Lily stood in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the dress hanging on her closet door. She'd woken to find it delivered at dawn, a simple cream sheath in silk that probably cost more than her monthly rent. It fit perfectly, as if Julian had somehow known her exact measurements. Because he's thorough, she thought, remembering his words. He researched me, reduced me to data points and measurements. The thought should have angered her. Instead, it just made her feel hollow. Her phone buzzed. Message from Julian. "Car will arrive at 1:30. Ceremony at 2. R." No poetry, no sentiment. Just logistics. Lily pulled on the dress, applied minimal makeup with shaking hands, and tried to see herself as a bride. Failed completely. She looked like a woman playing dress-up in someone else's life. The car was exactly on time, because of course it was. The driver held the door with the kind of professional courtesy that came from being paid enough not to ask questions. City Hall was mercifully quiet, the afternoon lull between lunch hour appointments. Raymond was already there, looking kind and slightly worried. Natalie arrived moments later, took one look at Lily's face, and gripped her hand hard enough to hurt. Then Julian emerged from a side office, and Lily forgot how to breathe. He wore a charcoal suit that made his gray eyes even more striking. His hair was perfectly styled. He looked like every fantasy of a groom she'd never let herself have, handsome and distant and completely untouchable. When his eyes found hers, something passed between them. Recognition, resignation, the acknowledgement that they were about to cross a line neither of them could uncross. The ceremony itself was brief and bloodless. A judge with kind eyes spoke words about love and commitment that felt like mockery. Lily repeated vows she didn't mean, promising forever to a man she barely knew. Julian's voice was steady as he spoke his own vows, giving nothing away. Then came the rings. Julian produced a small box from his pocket, opened it to reveal a platinum band set with small diamonds that caught the fluorescent light. He slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "How did you?" Lily whispered. "I'm thorough," he murmured, and something in his tone was almost gentle. She had no ring for him, hadn't thought that far ahead. But he produced another band, simple platinum, and placed it in her trembling hand. His hand was warm and steady as she slid the ring on. For just a moment, his fingers closed around hers. "You may kiss your bride." Julian's hands came up to frame her face, the gesture strangely tender. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, to protest, to stop this. She didn't. His lips met hers in a kiss that was meant to be brief, performative, meaningless. But it lingered, half a second too long, long enough for Lily to feel the warmth of him, to taste coffee and something sweet, long enough to forget, just for a moment, that this was theater. When they pulled apart, Raymond was smiling. Natalie looked worried, and Julian's expression was once again perfectly controlled, as if the kiss had meant nothing at all. "Congratulations," the judge said warmly. "I wish you both every happiness." Outside, the rain had started to fall. 6 weeks passed in a strange dream where Lily's old life and new existence collided in ways that left her constantly off balance. 6 weeks of waking in a penthouse instead of her studio apartment, of learning to navigate rooms larger than her entire former home, of pretending this was somehow normal. The wedding night had been awkward and mercifully brief. Julian had shown her to the guest room he'd prepared, a space decorated in soft grays and whites that managed to be both luxurious and impersonal. The closet was filled with clothes in her size, designer labels she recognized from magazine spreads. On the nightstand, she'd found a welcome note in elegant handwriting. "Mrs. Hawthorne, welcome home. I've stocked the kitchen with comfort foods. If you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. Warmly, Mrs. Chen." Mrs. Chen turned out to be Julian's housekeeper, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a grandmotherly warmth that felt startlingly out of place in the cold perfection of the penthouse. She came 3 times a week, cleaned things that never seemed dirty, and left homemade soup in containers labeled with reheating instructions. "Mr. Hawthorne mentioned you have family medical concerns," Mrs. Chen had said on their first meeting, her voice gentle. "I added ginger to the chicken soup, good for stress." Lily had nearly cried at the simple kindness. Later, she'd learned Julian had told his housekeeper only that his wife was worried about a sick sister. The most emotion he'd shown about her situation to anyone. The thought had done something strange to her chest. The morning routine became familiar through repetition. Lily woke early, teacher's habit impossible to break, and would find Julian already in the kitchen. The first time had startled them both. He'd stood at the espresso machine in dress pants and a white shirt not yet buttoned at the collar, his hair slightly damp from the shower. The domesticity of it had felt more intimate than their wedding kiss. "I didn't expect you up this early," he'd said, something almost like embarrassment crossing his face. "I teach 3rd grade. Early rising is an occupational hazard." He'd made her coffee without asking, then watched with poorly concealed horror as she added cream and sugar until it was barely recognizable as coffee anymore. "That's sacrilege," he'd said.
the corner of his mouth twitching in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "That's palatable. Your coffee tastes like suffering." And there it was, the smallest huff of amusement. Barely a laugh, but something. The routine continued. Every morning, they'd share that space. Not quite comfortable, but no longer hostile. He'd read the financial news on his tablet, she'd grade papers or plan lessons. They'd exist in parallel, two strangers learning the geography of each other's habits. Emma's treatment had started the week after the wedding. Lily held her sister's hand through the most painful parts of it.
The first round of infusions, watched the experimental medication drip into her veins, and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "He should be here," Emma had said drowsily, the medication making her loose-tongued. "Your husband, Julian. I want to meet the man who saved my life." Soon, Lily had promised, another lie to add to the growing collection. He's traveling for work. In truth, Julian had offered to come, had stood in the kitchen that morning, adjusting his cuffs in that way he did when uncomfortable, and said, "I could accompany you to the hospital, if you'd like." The offer had surprised her. "You don't have to. This wasn't part of the agreement." Something had flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or irritation at the reminder of what they were. Nevertheless, the offer stands. "Thank you, but no. Emma will have questions, expectations. It's easier if I remain theoretical." "Yes." He'd nodded once, sharp and final, and left for his office without another word. The IVF procedure was scheduled for the end of the second week. They'd returned to the same clinic, the same doctor, the same careful clinical language about genetic material and embryo transfer and optimal conditions for implantation. Lily lay on the examination table, trying not to think about the profoundly weird reality of having her husband's child implanted in her womb while barely knowing what he looked like when he smiled. Julian waited in the recovery area afterward, pacing like an expectant father in some old movie. When the doctor cleared her to leave, he'd appeared at her side, his hand hovering near her elbow. The doctor said rest helps, so rest. "I'm fine. It's not surgery, just—" "Lily," his voice was firm. "Please." She'd let him help her to the car, too tired from sedation to argue, let him guide her upstairs to the penthouse, let him bring her tea and the remote control and a blanket that was probably worth more than her old car. "Mrs. Chen says rest helps," he'd said, something almost defensive in his tone. "So rest." She'd watched him through half-closed eyes as he adjusted the blanket, his movements awkward but careful. "You're not as terrible as you pretend to be." His hands had stilled. For a moment, he'd looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. Then, "Don't count on it." But he dimmed the lights on his way out and checked on her twice before leaving for evening meetings. 2 weeks later, the pregnancy test came back positive. Julian had been in Tokyo when the doctor called. She'd sat alone in the penthouse, staring at the confirmation email, trying to process the reality growing inside her. She called Emma first, told her sister the news, listened to her delighted squeals, and felt the weight of the lie pressing on her chest like a stone. Then she called Julian. He answered on the first ring, despite the time difference. "Is everything all right?" "It's positive. The pregnancy. It took." Silence. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. "Thank God." "The money will be transferred today?" "Within the hour." A pause. "How do you feel?" The question surprised her. "I don't know. It doesn't feel real yet." "No, I imagine it wouldn't." Another pause, longer this time. "Lily, thank you for doing this." She'd hung up feeling more confused than before. He was supposed to be cold, distant, transactional. But there were moments, small and quickly hidden, where he seemed almost human. When he returned from Tokyo 3 days later, he'd brought her something. A small package, wrapped simply, left on the kitchen counter with a note. "Congratulations." Inside was a book, first edition, leather-bound, Charlotte's Web. "You said your father learned to read late," Julian had said that evening when she'd found him in his study. Lily had stared at the book, then at him. "How did you remember that?" "I'm thorough."
But his voice was softer than usual, and he wouldn't quite meet her eyes. This must have cost. It's a gift. Not everything is a transaction. She'd wanted to argue, to maintain the boundaries they'd established. Instead, she'd whispered, "Thank you." The weeks that followed fell into rhythm. Lily continued teaching, her students oblivious to the secret growing inside their teacher. Julian worked his impossible hours, came home late, but always checked to see if she'd eaten. They had dinner together twice a week, Mrs. Chen's mandate. Married people eat together, the housekeeper had declared, with the kind of authority that allowed no argument. Those dinners were strange affairs. Lily would cook sometimes, simple meals that made Julian's eyebrows rise in surprise. "You don't have to do this. We can order in." "I like cooking, and I'm not going to eat takeout for 18 months. He'd ate her pasta with an expression of concentration, as if trying to solve an equation. "It's good." "You sound surprised." "I am. I didn't think elementary school teachers had time to learn actual culinary skills." "We're full of surprises." "Yes," he'd said, looking at her with those storm gray eyes. "You are." Late one night, 6 weeks into the marriage, Lily found herself unable to sleep. The pregnancy symptoms had started. Nothing dramatic, just persistent nausea and exhaustion that made rest both necessary and impossible. She went to the living room, stood at those massive windows, and looked out at the city, sparkling below. This was her life now, this impossible, temporary, completely surreal life. Can't sleep? She turned to find Julian in the doorway, wearing sleep pants and a t-shirt. She'd never seen him so casual. He looked younger, more vulnerable. "Baby's already keeping me up," she said, trying for lightness. He moved to stand beside her at the window, careful to maintain distance between them. "Does it feel strange, knowing you're pregnant?" "Everything about this situation feels strange." A ghost of a smile. Fair point. They stood in silence, watching the city breathe. Then Julian spoke, his voice low. "I dated someone in college. Owen. Artist, kind, uncomplicated." Lily blinked at the non sequitur. "Okay?" "You asked once why I needed this arrangement, why I couldn't just marry someone normally." He rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "I was engaged 3 years ago. Victoria Hastings. She was perfect on paper. Right family, right education, right ambition. What happened? I discovered she was only with me for access to Hawthorne Global. She'd been passing company secrets to competitors, using our relationship to position herself for a hostile takeover." Lily's breath caught. "Julian." "I ended it. Publicly humiliated her
In the process, she swore she'd destroy me. He turned to look at her. "That's why this had to be transactional. Why I needed someone with no connections to my world, no ulterior motives. Someone who needed money, not power. Someone desperate enough to agree to your insane arrangement. Someone brave enough," he corrected quietly. "There's a difference." The compliment settled warm in her chest. Dangerous. "What about you?" Julian asked. "Emma mentioned you dated someone seriously before." "Owen Fletcher, college boyfriend. He was everything you'd think an artist would be. Passionate, romantic, spontaneous. He proposed senior year." "You said no?" "I said not yet. I wanted to establish my career first, make sure I could support myself. He wanted bohemian adventure and trust that things would work out." She smiled sadly. "We wanted different versions of the future." "Do you regret it?" "I regret that I hurt him, but no, we weren't right for each other. He needed someone who could live on faith and passion. I needed stability, plans, the illusion of control. And now you've married a stranger for money to save your sister, very stable and controlled." Lily laughed despite herself. Life's funny that way. Julian's expression softened in the dim light. "For what it's worth, I'm glad it was you who answered that advertisement, who agreed to this insanity." "Are you?" "You're different than I expected, better than I deserve." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither of them was ready to unpack. Lily's heart was beating too fast. Julian was standing too close. The air felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. His hand came up slowly, fingertips barely brushing her cheek. "Lily." His phone rang, shattering the moment like glass. Victoria's name flashed on the screen. Julian stepped back, the distance between them suddenly vast. "I should take this." "Right, of course. Good night, Julian." She fled to her room, closed the door, and pressed her palm against the wood. On the other side, she could hear Julian's low voice, tense and clipped. She didn't hear the words, didn't need to. The message was clear. Whatever moment they'd almost had was gone. 2 days later, an envelope arrived, heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. An invitation to the annual Hawthorne Global Gala, 8 weeks away. Julian found her staring at it in the kitchen. "Our first public appearance as a couple. The board will be there, Victoria will be there. We need to be convincing." "I don't know how to be convincing at these things. I've arranged for a styling team tomorrow. Hair, makeup, wardrobe." "Julian, that's not necessary." "It is." His voice was gentle but firm. "Victoria will be looking for any weakness, any crack in the facade. I need you prepared." That night, Lily's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. You don't belong in his world. V." Her hands shook as she screenshotted and sent it to Julian. He appeared at her bedroom door 10 minutes later, his face dark with fury. "She's escalating. The gala will be a test. She'll attack you in every way she can think of. I can handle it. Can you?" He moved into the room, all pretense of distance forgotten. "Victoria is vicious. She'll find every insecurity and exploit it. She'll make you feel small and ordinary and completely out of place." "I am ordinary." "No." His voice was fierce. "You're extraordinary. And if she makes you believe otherwise, she wins." Lily looked up at him, at the intensity in his gray eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. "Are you ready for this? For what comes next?" Julian's jaw tightened. "No, but when has that ever mattered?" He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. She felt his breath, warm against her neck. "There." His voice was rougher than usual. "Now you're ready." In the car, the city lights streaked past like falling stars. Julian's hand found hers in the darkness between them, his fingers lacing through his with surprising familiarity. "Are you nervous?" he asked quietly. "Terrified." "Good. Me too." You turned to look at him, surprised. "You're never nervous." "I'm always nervous. I've just had 35 years of practice hiding it." He squeezed her hand. "Stay close tonight. If Victoria corners you, if anyone makes you uncomfortable, you find me immediately. Understood? I can handle myself." "I know you can, but you don't have to. Not tonight." The hotel hosting the gala was the kind of place where even the air felt expensive. Crystal chandeliers dripped from vaulted ceilings. An orchestra played something. Women in gowns that cost more than cars laughed behind champagne flutes while men in tuxedos discussed mergers and stock prices. Lily felt every eye turn toward them as they entered. The weight of scrutiny was physical, pressing against her skin like hands. Julian's hand settled on her lower back, warm and grounding. He leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. "Breathe. You look stunning." "They're staring because they're jealous. They're staring because they're wondering what you're doing with someone like me. Someone beautiful, intelligent, and carrying my child. Let them wonder." The casual mention of the pregnancy, the possessive undertone in his voice, sent heat flooding through her. This was performance, she reminded herself. He was playing a role. They both were. But when he looked at her, the intensity in his gray eyes felt dangerously real. They moved through the crowd, Julian making introductions. Board members with sharp eyes and sharper questions. Business partners who smiled with too many teeth. Lily shook hands and made small talk, every moment feeling like a test she might be failing. Then she saw her, Victoria Hastings. She entered like a declaration of war, all crimson silk and platinum hair, her beauty the cold, perfect kind that belonged on magazine covers. Her ice-blue eyes swept the room and landed on them with laser focus. Julian's hand tightened on Lily's waist. "Here we go." Victoria approached with predatory grace, a champagne flute in hand that Lily suspected was more prop than beverage. "Julian, how domestic you look." "Victoria." His voice was arctic. Those cold eyes turned to Lily. "We haven't been formally introduced. Victoria Hastings, Julian's ex-fiancée," Julian interrupted. "Briefly, 3 years ago. And you are." Victoria's smile was all edges. "I'm afraid I didn't catch your name in any social registers." "Lily Hawthorne." She forced confidence into her voice. "I'm a teacher." "How quaint." The word dripped condescension. "Where did you two meet again?" "Charity gala," Julian said smoothly. "Children's Literacy Foundation event, 6 months ago." Victoria's eyebrow arched. "Strange. I was at every major charity event last spring. Don't recall seeing her." Lily felt panic flutter in her chest, but Julian had prepared her for this. It was a smaller venue, the foundation's annual fundraiser. You probably wouldn't have been invited unless you were specifically invested in literacy programs. The subtle dig landed. Victoria's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "And you just swept her off her feet, Julian. So unlike you to be impulsive." Her gaze dropped to Lily's stomach, to the subtle curve the dress emphasized. "Though I see the timeline was quite accelerated. Congratulations on the timing." The implication hung in the air, ugly and clear. Lily felt her cheeks burn. But before she could respond, Julian stepped closer, his arm sliding around her waist in a gesture both protective and claiming. "People change, Victoria. Apparently that's a concept you struggle with." Victoria's expression turned venomous for just a flash before she recovered. "How delightful. I'll leave you two to your evening. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other very soon." She glided away, leaving poison in her wake. "That went about as well as expected," Julian muttered. "Are you okay?" "She's lovely. I can see why you almost married her." A surprised bark of laughter escaped him. "Your sarcasm is showing, Mrs. Hawthorne." "Good. I was aiming for visible." His eyes crinkled at the corners, a genuine smile that transformed his face. Several nearby guests noticed, their expressions shifting from curious to approving. "See, those looks said. They really are happy together." More board members approached. Eleanor Whitemore, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that missed nothing, studied Lily with unnerving intensity. "How refreshing to see Julian with someone so real," Eleanor said, and the compliment felt like it had hidden teeth. "I'll take that as a compliment," Lily replied carefully. "How are you finding the adjustment? Julian's lifestyle is quite demanding." Translation: Can you handle being married to someone this wealthy, this powerful, this far out of your league? "I'm learning," Lily said honestly, "but some things don't require adjustment. Love is love, regardless of tax bracket." Eleanor's expression shifted, something that might have been approval flickering across her features. "Well said." Julian's hand tightened on her waist, and when she glanced up at him, she saw surprise and something that looked almost like pride. The orchestra began a waltz. Couples drifted toward the dance floor in a choreographed migration of silk and expensive cologne. "We should dance," Julian said quietly. "It's expected. I'm not very good at this. Follow my lead." He guided her onto the floor, one hand finding her waist, the other capturing her fingers. When he pulled her close, closer than strictly necessary for a waltz, Lily's breath caught. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she whispered as they began to move. "Dancing? All of it. Standing in a ballroom wearing a dress that costs more than my car used to, pretending to be someone I'm not." "You're not pretending." His voice was low, meant only for her. "You handled Eleanor perfectly.
You stood up to Victoria. You're doing incredibly well. I'm lying to everyone. We're protecting what matters. Your sister, my company. That's not lying. That's surviving. She wanted to argue, but being in his arms felt too good. They fit together in a way that shouldn't be possible between two strangers playing pretend. His hand was warm against her back. His chest was solid beneath her palm. And when she looked up, his gray eyes were focused on her with an intensity that made her forget there were other people in the room. "Lily," he said, and her name in his voice was different than before. Softer, more real. What? This feels more real than it should. The words hung between them, dangerous and honest. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. "Julian, I know, it complicates everything. But when I touch you, it's not entirely for show anymore." She should pull away, should remind him of the contract, the arrangement, the expiration date stamped on whatever this was becoming. Instead, she leaned closer, her head nearly resting against his shoulder. "Then don't say it," she whispered. "If saying it makes it real, just don't." Too late. They danced until the song ended, until pulling apart became inevitable. Around them, other couples smiled approvingly. "See how in love they are?" those smiles said.
Look together. If only they knew the truth was far more complicated. Lily needed air, needed space to think, to remember why she was here and what this really was. "I'm going to step outside for a moment. I'll come with you." "No, stay. Network. Do whatever it is you do with these things. I just need 5 minutes." She saw reluctance in his expression, but he nodded. "The terrace. Don't go far." The terrace was blessedly empty, the city spread below like scattered diamonds. Lily gripped the railing, gulping cool air, trying to slow her racing heart. Touching performance in there. Lily spun to find Victoria leaning against the doorway, champagne flute in hand, her expression pure venom. "I don't know what you mean. Please, I know a transaction when I see one." Victoria moved closer, predatory and confident. "Julian needs an heir for his inheritance. You need money for something. Medical bills, perhaps? Student loans?" Lily's blood went cold. "I don't know what you think you know. I know plenty. Your sister, Emma Monroe, stage 4 kidney disease, experimental treatment at Mercy General, treatment that mysteriously got funded 3 weeks ago, right around the time Julian withdrew a substantial amount in liquid assets." The world tilted. "How do you—" "I have resources, and I'm very motivated." Victoria's smile was cruel. "People will be fascinated to learn Julian bought himself a wife and baby. The board tends to frown on inheritance fraud." "It's not fraud. We're married. The baby is his." "But the circumstances are questionable, aren't they? And Julian's grandfather's will specifically required a legitimate heir from a legitimate marriage, not a purchased arrangement." Victoria set her glass on the railing with delicate precision. "I'll give you one chance. Walk away now, quietly. I'll even let you keep whatever he's already paid you. But if you stay, I will destroy you, and him, the press, the board, the courts. I'll tie up that inheritance for years. And your sister's treatment funding? I wonder how quickly that could be challenged in court." The threat was clear, devastating. Emma's life hanging in the balance again. "Think about it," Victoria said, turning to leave. "You have until tomorrow to decide." She disappeared back into the ballroom, leaving Lily shaking and sick. Julian found her moments later, his face darkening when he saw her expression. "What happened?" "Victoria. She knows. About Emma, the money, the timing, everything." His jaw clenched. "What did she say?" "She's going to expose us, go to the board, claim inheritance fraud. She threatened Emma's treatment funding. She's bluffing. She can't prove." "Julian, she knows things she shouldn't be able to know. Medical records, financial transactions. She's serious." "Then we make her threat meaningless." His voice was steel. "We go back in there, and we make this marriage so convincing that no one will question it." "How?" He took her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the fury in his eyes.
We show them what we're becoming, what this is turning into, despite our best efforts to keep it simple. And what's that? Real. Then he kissed her. Not the careful, performative kiss from their wedding. This was claiming, desperate, honest. His lips demanded and she gave, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. She tasted champagne and want and something that felt dangerously close to need. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she could hear gasps from the doorway. They had an audience. Half the gala had witnessed that kiss. Good, Lily thought hazily. Let them see. Let Victoria see. Julian rested his forehead against hers. Too much? Not enough. His eyes darkened with something that made heat pool low in her stomach. Lily, if we keep going down this path, I know, everything changes. We should go back inside, face them together. She nodded, letting him lead her back into the ballroom, where whispers followed them like waves. But she barely noticed. All she could feel was the ghost of his lips on hers, and the terrifying knowledge that the line between pretend and real had just been obliterated completely. The ballroom fell into a silence so complete Lily could hear her own heartbeat. Every eye was on them. Some faces showed approval, others shock, but Victoria's expression was pure fury, barely concealed behind a mask of composure. Julian's hand remained on Lily's waist, possessive and unwavering. He turned to face the crowd with the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of commanding rooms full of powerful people. Eleanor Whitemore approached first, her sharp eyes moving between them with newfound assessment. Well, that was quite a display, Julian. Eleanor. His voice was steady, giving nothing away. Your wife seems to bring out a side of you I've never seen. Eleanor's lips curved into something that might have been approval. Passion. It's refreshing. Before Julian could respond, Victoria materialized beside them like a viper in silk. How convenient. A public declaration of love right when questions about your marriage begin to surface. Julian's expression turned glacial. Careful, Victoria. Why? Afraid I'll say something that ruins the fairy tale? She turned to the small crowd gathering around them. Did you all know that Lily had substantial medical debt? That Julian paid it off right before their sudden marriage? Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Lily felt her face burn with humiliation, but Julian's hand tightened on her waist, anchoring her. Yes, he said calmly, I helped my wife's family during a medical crisis. It's what people who love each other do. Or what people do when they're buying cooperation, Victoria countered. I have documentation, financial records showing Julian withdrew nearly $1 million in liquid assets the same week marriage licenses were filed. The timing is remarkably suspicious, wouldn't you say? Eleanor's expression hardened. Victoria, these are serious accusations. I'm simply raising questions the board should consider. Julian's grandfather's will requires a legitimate heir from a legitimate marriage. If this arrangement is transactional, if he essentially purchased a wife to secure his inheritance, that's fraud. The word hung in the air like poison. Around them, board members exchanged loaded glances. This was exactly what Victoria wanted: public doubt, legal ammunition. Lily felt Julian's fury radiating through the hand on her back, felt the moment he was about to explode in her defense. And she knew, with sudden clarity, that if he let his anger speak for him, Victoria would twist it into evidence of guilt. So she stepped forward, putting herself between Julian and his ex-fiancé.
You're right, Lily said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent ballroom. Julian helped me. My sister was dying. I had $127,000 in medical debt and no way to pay for the treatment that would save her life. Victoria's smile was triumphant. So you admit? I admit that the man I fell in love with saw someone drowning and threw a lifeline. Lily's voice grew stronger, fueled by weeks of lying and the desperate need to finally speak a truth, even if it was wrapped in necessary fiction. You want to paint that as transactional? Fine, but love is always a transaction. We give, we receive, we sacrifice, we compromise. She turned to look at Julian, and the expression on his face made her breath catch. Wonder, pride, something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. Julian gave me hope when I had none, she continued, speaking to him now, forgetting the audience. He gave my sister a future. He gave me a reason to believe that maybe the world wasn't as cruel as I thought it was. Her hand moved to rest on her stomach, on the subtle curve where their child grew. And I gave him something too, not just a child, but perspective, a reason to come home at night instead of sleeping at his office. Someone who sees him as more than a stock portfolio or a business opportunity. She turned back to the crowd, to Eleanor and the other board members, watching with varying expressions of surprise and consideration. Mrs. Whitmore, you said earlier it was refreshing that Julian chose someone real, but you didn't mean it as a compliment. You meant ordinary, below his class, not worthy of the Hawthorne name. Her voice hardened. I'm a teacher. I make $42,000 a year. I'll never understand trusts and quarterly reports and whatever else happens in those board meetings. But I understand people, and Julian Hawthorne is the best man I've ever known. Julian made a sound beside her, low and wounded. He's complicated, Lily continued, her voice breaking slightly. He's guarded. He wraps himself in ice because he's been betrayed by people he trusted. But underneath that, he's good. He's brilliant and dedicated, and he cares more than he'll ever admit about the legacy his grandfather left him. She turned to Eleanor directly. So if you want to challenge our marriage, challenge it. Question the timing, question my motives, question whether someone like me belongs in his world. But don't you dare question whether he's worth loving, because he is, even when he doesn't believe it himself. The silence that followed was absolute. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd just laid herself bare in front of dozens of strangers, defending a marriage that was supposed to be fake, and a man she barely knew but somehow understood with painful clarity. Then Julian's hands were on her face, turning her toward him. His gray eyes blazed with something fierce and desperate. "Lily," he whispered, and her name sounded like a prayer. Then he kissed her. Not for show this time, not for the audience, but because, Lily realized with stunning clarity, he couldn't help himself. His lips claimed hers with a desperation that spoke of weeks of denial, of fighting feelings neither of them had wanted. His hands trembled against her face, one sliding into her hair, destroying the careful updo the stylist had created. She kissed him back with equal desperation, her fingers gripping his jacket, pulling him closer. She could taste his surprise, his surrender, the moment he stopped trying to maintain distance and just let himself feel. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the ballroom erupted in applause. But Lily barely heard it. All she could see was Julian's face, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I'm not going to let them hurt you," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, but speaking only to her. "Victoria can challenge all she wants. The board can question, but you're my wife, and I'll burn the company down before I let anyone make you feel like you don't belong." More applause. Eleanor Whitmore stepped forward, her expression thoughtful. "Julian, a word." He hesitated, clearly unwilling to leave Lily's side, but she squeezed his hand. "Go, I'll be fine." Eleanor led him to a quiet corner, and even from a distance, Lily could see the intense conversation. Other board members joined them. Victoria watched from across the room, her expression venomous. A waiter offered Lily water. She took it gratefully, her hands shaking so badly the glass nearly slipped from her fingers. What had she just done? What had they just done? That kiss had been real. His reaction had been real. And her speech, God, her speech had been full of truths she hadn't realized she felt until the words were spilling out. Natalie appeared at her elbow like a guardian angel. "Holy hell, Lil, that was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Both, probably. You meant it. What you said about him." It wasn't a question. Lily closed her eyes. "I think I did, which is insane, because this was supposed to be business. Simple, temporary. Nothing about the way he kissed you looked temporary." Lily turned to watch Julian across the room, deep in discussion with Eleanor and 2 other board members. His shoulders were tense, his jaw tight, but his gaze kept flickering back to her, checking.
making sure she was okay. "I think I'm in trouble, Nat." "Yeah, babe, I think you both are." 30 minutes later, Julian returned. His expression was unreadable as he took her hand. "We're leaving." "What did Eleanor say?" "Later. I need to get you out of here." In the car, the silence was heavy with everything unsaid. Julian's hand found hers in the darkness, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. The gesture was absent, automatic, as if touching her had become as natural as breathing. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Defend me like that." "Yes, I did." "Why?" "Because you're worth defending. Because somewhere between coffee in the morning and late-night conversations by the window, you became real to me. Because that kiss felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been searching for. Because it was true," she said instead. "Everything I said was true." He turned to look at her, his eyes searching her face in the passing streetlights. "Eleanor said Victoria's challenge won't hold. The board voted 7-3 in my favor." "That's good." "Eleanor was the deciding vote. She said your speech proved genuine feeling, that my reaction proved I love you, contract or not." The word love hung between them like a live wire. "But here's the thing, Lily." His voice was rough. "I'm not sure she was wrong." Her breath caught.
Julian, I know, it's not part of the plan. It complicates everything. But somewhere between you moving into my home and you defending my entire existence to a room full of strangers, I stopped being able to pretend this is just business. We signed a contract, 18 months, then divorce. Fuck the contract. The profanity was so uncharacteristic, so raw, that it shocked them both. I don't want you there because of a contract. I don't want you sleeping in a separate room, maintaining careful distance, counting down to when you can leave. Then what do you want? He looked at her with such intensity, it stole her breath. Everything. I want to wake up next to you. I want to know what you look like first thing in the morning. I want to raise this baby together, not as a transaction, but as partners. I want... His voice broke. I want you to stay, not because I'm paying you, but because you want to be there. Lily's eyes filled with tears. You're asking me to risk my heart on something that started as a lie. I'm asking you to take a chance on something that became real despite our best efforts to keep it fake. The car pulled up to the penthouse. Neither of them moved. I need time, Lily whispered, to think. To figure out what's real and what's just proximity and hormones and circumstance. Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. How much time? I don't know. They rode the elevator in silence. At her bedroom door, Lily paused. Julian stood in the hallway, looking lost and hopeful and terrified all at once. "Thank you," she said softly, "for defending me tonight, for being willing to burn it all down. Always," he said. "Even if you decide to leave, even if this ends, I will always defend you." She went into her room and closed the door, then pressed her palm against the wood. On the other side, she heard Julian's footsteps, moving away, heard his door close. That night, sleep was impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt his lips on hers, heard his voice saying "fuck the contract," saw the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd asked her to stay. She'd come into this arrangement to save her sister. Simple, transactional, temporary. But nothing about Julian Hawthorne was simple, and what she felt for him was becoming terrifyingly permanent. Around 3 a.m., her phone buzzed. Text from Julian, just one line. I meant every word. Lily stared at the message until her vision blurred. Then she typed back, "So did I." She hit send before she could overthink it. Watched the 3 dots appear as he typed. Then, does that change anything? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Did it? Could it? They'd built this relationship on lies and necessity. Could something real grow from that foundation? Before she could answer, another message. "Never mind. Don't answer that. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready, or if you're never ready, I'll still be here." Lily set the phone down and pressed her hands against her eyes. Across the hall, Julian lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd just ruined everything or finally made it real. Neither of them slept.
Neither of them knew that the next morning would bring a choice that would change everything. 6 weeks passed like a wound slowly closing. 6 weeks of careful distance and polite conversation, and the studied avoidance of anything that resembled the intimacy they'd shared the night of the gala. 6 weeks of Julian leaving for work before Lily woke and coming home after she'd retreated to her room. 6 weeks of pretending that kiss hadn't changed everything. Emma was thriving. The treatment had worked beyond the doctor's most optimistic projections. She was in remission, her kidney function improving daily, her color returning, along with her brilliant smile. Lily should have been overjoyed, was overjoyed. But the happiness felt hollow, incomplete, like celebrating a victory while losing a war she hadn't known she was fighting. She'd returned to teaching part-time, her pregnancy now obvious at 20 weeks. Her students were delighted, asking endless questions about the baby, drawing pictures of what they imagined he or she would look like. Lily smiled and answered and felt like a fraud. Because how could she explain that she didn't know if the baby's father would still be in her life when it was born? Julian had kept his distance, true to his word, giving her space, giving her time. But the space felt like abandonment, and the time felt like torture. They still had dinner twice a week, Mrs. Chen's mandate unchanged. But the meals were awkward, full of weather commentary and work updates, and anything that wasn't what they both wanted to say. "How's Emma?" Julian would ask. "Great, the doctors are amazed." "Good, that's good." Silence. Fork scraping plates. The weight of everything unsaid pressing down until Lily could barely breathe. Then, one Tuesday evening, Julian came home early with an envelope, legal-sized, official-looking. He set it on the kitchen counter where Lily was making tea, his expression carefully blank. "What's that?" "Divorce papers." His voice was flat, emotionless. "My legal team found grounds based on the contract basis of the marriage. It won't affect the baby's legitimacy or your compensation. Everything we agreed to remains intact." Lily stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "I see. You said you needed time, to think, to figure out what was real." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "This gives you an out. If what you decide is that this was all just proximity and circumstance, you can sign these. Clean break, no complications. And if I don't sign them, finally," he looked at her. His gray eyes were haunted. "That what we have is worth fighting for. Even if it started as a lie, even if it's messy and complicated and nothing like any of us planned." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "That you love me, even a fraction as much as I've fallen in love with you." The words hung between them, devastating in their honesty. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Julian, I can't. You don't have to answer now. The papers are there. You can sign them whenever you're ready, or never. I'll be in my study." He left, taking all the air in the room with him. Lily stared at the envelope for a long time. Then she opened it, read the carefully worded legal language that would dissolve their marriage as cleanly as a surgical cut. All she had to do was sign, walk away with the money, her sister healthy, her life returned to normal. Except normal felt impossible now. Normal didn't include waking up in a penthouse or morning coffee with a man who took his black and watched her bastardize hers with cream and sugar. Normal didn't include late-night conversations about dreams and fears and the weight of legacy. Normal didn't include Julian Hawthorne, and the thought of a life without him felt like staring into a void. But she was afraid that what she felt was gratitude dressed up as love, afraid that she'd confused the intensity of their situation with genuine feeling, afraid that if she admitted she loved him, she'd be handing him the power to destroy her. She folded the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and set them aside. Not signed, but not destroyed either. The next morning, Lily met Emma for lunch at a cafe near the hospital. Her sister looked vibrant, healthy, so completely alive that Lily's chest ached with gratitude. "You look terrible," Emma said bluntly, hugging her. "What's going on?" "Just pregnancy fatigue." "Liar. You've been weird for weeks, and don't think I haven't noticed that Julian never comes around anymore. What happened?" Lily stirred her decaf coffee, trying to find words that weren't either lies or the complete truth. "We're figuring things out. Marriage is complicated." "Are you going to leave him?" The question was so direct it made Lily's breath catch. "I don't know."
Do you love him? Yes. God, yes. So much it terrifies me. It's complicated, Em. Love usually is. Emma reached across the table to take her hand. But here's what I know. You've been different since you married him. Softer. Like some part of you that was always clenched tight finally relaxed. And the few times I've seen you two together, the way he looks at you, she shook her head. That's not complicated. That's someone completely gone for you. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm confusing gratitude for love? Then you're selling yourself short, and him. Emma squeezed her hand. Lil, you saved my life. You did whatever you had to do, made whatever sacrifices were necessary. Don't I get a say in this? What do you mean? I mean, I don't want my life to be the reason you're miserable. If you love him, if there's even a chance this could be real, don't throw it away because you think you owe me some kind of perfect martyrdom. Lily's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? When my sister gave me a future. Now I want to make sure you have one too. That afternoon, Lily was grading papers in the penthouse when her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Monroe, this is Owen Fletcher. I don't know if you remember me. Owen, her college boyfriend. She hadn't thought about him in years. Owen, of course I remember. How are you? Good, really good. I'm in the city for an art show Friday night, and I heard through the grapevine about your sister. I just wanted to say I'm so glad she's okay. They talked for a few minutes, catching up on years and careers and the comfortable nostalgia of shared history. Then, the art show is Friday at 7. I know you're married now, but would you want to come? Just as friends. I'd love to catch up properly. Lily hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was a bad idea. But she was tired of sitting in the penthouse, tired of the careful distance, tired of not knowing how to bridge the gap between her and Julian. Sure, that sounds nice. Friday night, she stood in an art gallery in Chelsea, surrounded by Owen's paintings and people who spoke about composition and color theory. Owen was exactly as she remembered, kind, warm, uncomplicated. He talked about his work with passion, asked about her teaching with genuine interest. You seem different, he observed, handing her a glass of sparkling water. More guarded, or maybe just tired. It's been a complicated few months. Marriage will do that, he smiled gently. I heard you married Julian Hawthorne. That's quite a leap from the anti-establishment girl I dated in college. People change. Do they? Or do they just become more of who they always were? Before Lily could answer, she felt it, the prickle of awareness down her spine that meant someone was watching. She turned, and her heart stopped. Julian stood across the gallery, Raymond beside him, both in suits that screamed they'd come from the office. But Julian wasn't looking at the art or his lawyer. He was staring at Lily with an expression of such raw pain it made her chest ache. Their eyes met across the crowded room. She saw the moment he registered Owen's hand on her lower back, saw his jaw clench, saw something in his expression shatter. Then he was moving toward them, with controlled urgency, Raymond trailing behind, looking concerned. Lily, Julian's voice was tight, carefully controlled. Julian, what are you doing here? Raymond dragged me out, said I needed to stop wallowing and rejoin the living. His eyes cut to Owen. Who's this? Owen Fletcher. And you are? Her husband. The words were cold, possessive. Oh, I thought she said... Owen looked at Lily in confusion. I said it was complicated, Lily finished weakly. You're still wearing your ring, Julian said, and his voice cracked on the last word. Lily looked down at her hand, the platinum band with its small diamonds. She hadn't taken it off, hadn't even thought about it. Julian, Owen is just a friend. We dated in college. This isn't. Isn't what? His control was slipping. Isn't you moving on? Because I gave you divorce papers and space and time, and apparently that was you deciding to choose someone else? That's not fair. Fair? His laugh was bitter. You're right. Nothing about this is fair. I fell in love with my wife, and she's treating our marriage like a problem to solve instead of something worth fighting for. You gave me divorce papers. Her voice rose despite her best efforts to keep this private. Because you said you needed an out, because I thought giving you choice was the right thing to do. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something rough and desperate. But watching you here with him, seeing his hand on you, imagining you choosing him over me? Julian, this is not what you think.
Then what is it, Lily? Because from here, it looks like you've already made your decision. Owen cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe I should give you two some privacy. No, Julian's eyes never left Lily's face. I should go. I'm clearly interrupting. Julian, wait. But he was already leaving, moving through the crowd with controlled fury. Raymond gave Lily an apologetic look before following. Lily, I'm so sorry, Owen said. I didn't mean to cause problems. It's not your fault. This is complicated, didn't begin to cover it. She grabbed her coat and purse. I'm sorry, Owen. I have to go. She caught Julian on the street, rain starting to fall in cold drops. Julian, stop.
Done to face her, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. What do you want from me, Lily? You want the space? It's yours. You want the divorce? Sign the papers. You want your freedom? Take it. But don't ask me to watch you with someone else and pretend it doesn't destroy me. I don't want someone else. Then why won't you just tell me what you want? Because I've laid myself bare. I've told you I love you, that I want you to stay, that I'll take whatever you're willing to give, even if it's just crumbs. His voice broke. What more can I do? You can stop assuming you know what I'm thinking. Stop deciding things for me, like giving me divorce papers without asking if that's what I want. You said you needed time to think. I needed time to know if what we have is real or just desperation and circumstance. She was crying now, rain and tears mixing on her face. I needed to know if you actually love me or if I'm just a solution to your inheritance problem. How can you still question that? He moved closer, his hands coming up to frame her face. I would give up the inheritance, the company, all of it, if it meant you'd believe I love you for you, not for the baby, not for some transaction, but because you're brilliant and stubborn, and you make terrible coffee, and you defend people who don't deserve it, and you see me as more than just a portfolio. Julian, I love you, Lily, completely, messily, probably inadequately because I'm terrible at this, but God, I love you so much I can't breathe when you're not there. She was sobbing now, her hands gripping his jacket. I signed the papers. She felt him tense, felt the moment his heart broke. But I didn't send them, she continued quickly, because I couldn't let you go, because I fell in love with you when you remembered Emma's treatment schedule, when you brought me first editions and made me rest and looked at me like I was extraordinary instead of ordinary. You are extraordinary. I fell in love with you even though it terrifies me, even though this started as a lie, even though I don't know how to trust that it's real. His thumb wiped tears from her cheek. Then let me spend every day proving it's real. Let me wake up next to you and fall asleep holding you and raise our daughter together. Daughter? A ghost of a smile. 20-week ultrasound results came in today. Raymond told me. I didn't tell you because I didn't know if I had the right anymore. We're having a daughter, if you stay. If you give me a chance to be more than a contract, to be your husband, really your husband. Lily looked up at him through rain and tears, at this complicated man who'd built walls around his heart and somehow let her inside. What now? Now I take you home. We burn the divorce papers and we start over. No contract, no timeline, just us. That simple? That's simple. He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. Marry me, Lily. For real this time. Not for money or inheritance or desperation, but because you love me and I love you. And our daughter deserves parents who chose each other. We're already married. Then stay married to me. Choose me. Choose us. She pulled him down and kissed him in the rain, tasting salt and desperation and the beginning of something real. When they broke apart, both soaked and shaking, she whispered, "Take me home, Julian. Always." They stood in the penthouse, rain-soaked and trembling, staring at each other like survivors of a shipwreck finally reaching shore. Water dripped from Julian's hair, his expensive suit ruined. Lily's dress clung to her body, emphasizing the curve where their daughter grew. She'd never looked more beautiful to him. "We should get you dry," Julian said, his voice rough. "You'll catch cold. I don't care." But she was shivering. Whether from temperature or emotion, he couldn't tell. He disappeared into his room, returned with towels and one of his shirts. "Change, please. I'll make tea. When she emerged 10 minutes later, barefoot in his oversized shirt that fell to mid-thigh, Julian's breath caught. She looked young and vulnerable, and finally his. He handed her chamomile tea, their fingers brushing. The contact sent electricity through him, as it had from the very beginning. Some things, he realized, had always been real, even when they were pretending. "The divorce papers," Lily said quietly. "Your room, on the desk." She set down her tea, disappeared briefly, and returned with the envelope. Without ceremony, she walked to the fireplace, turned on the gas flames, and fed the papers to the fire. They watched the edges curl and blacken, watched their escape route burn to ash. "No going back now," she whispered. "No going back." Julian moved behind her, his hands settling on her shoulders, then sliding down to rest on her stomach. Their daughter. "Is this real, Lily? Tell me I'm not imagining this." She covered his hands with hers. "It's real. Terrifying and complicated, and nothing like I planned." He turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face with devastating gentleness. "I need you to understand something. Everything I said tonight, I meant. I would give it all up for you. The company, the inheritance, all of it. I know. That's how I know it's real." She smiled through fresh tears. "The man I married would never have said that. But the man I fell in love with would sacrifice everything for the people he loves. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." He kissed her then, not with the desperation of earlier, but with reverence, taking his time, learning her. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with want. "I've been sleeping across the hall from you for months, dying every night knowing you were so close, but untouchable. I'm touchable now." Something heated in his expression. "Lily, if we do this, if I take you to bed, there's no pretending anymore. No separate rooms, no careful distance. Good. I'm tired of distance." He lifted her effortlessly, carried her to his room, laid her on his bed with the kind of care reserved for precious things. The room was dark, save for city lights filtering through windows, painting them both in silver and shadow. "Tell me you're sure," he whispered against her lips. "I've never been more sure of anything." They made love slowly, carefully, Julian's hands trembling as they learned the geography of her body. Every touch was worship. Every kiss was promise. And when they finally came together, Lily felt pieces of herself she hadn't known were broken slot back into place. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, his hand resting possessively on her stomach where their daughter slept. "What do we tell people?" Lily asked drowsily. "The truth. That we fell in love. That the baby was a surprise, but a welcome one. That we're building a life together. They'll never believe it was all real. Let them think what they want. I know the truth. We chose each other. Everything else is noise." She traced the scar through his eyebrow, the one distinctive mark on his perfect face. "How'd you get this?" "Fell off my grandfather's porch when I was 7. He said scars prove we survived something." "What did this one prove you survived?" "Being a reckless kid who thought he could fly." He caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. "What about you? Any scars I should know about?" "Just the ones you can't see. Those are the ones I want to spend my life healing." She fell asleep in his arms, the sound of his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. When she woke hours later to pale morning light, she had a moment of disorientation before remembering. Then Julian's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against his chest, and she smiled. "Morning," he murmured, his voice sleep-rough and intimate. "How do you feel?" "Sore, happy, starving." He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "I can help with the starving part. The happy part I intend to make permanent." They had breakfast in bed, Julian ordering from a place that delivered obscenely expensive pastries. They fed each other bites, laughed over nothing, existed in the bubble of new love that made the world outside irrelevant. "I want to do something," Julian said suddenly. "For you, not as payment or obligation, but because I can and I want to." Lily tensed. "Julian, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He pulled out his phone, showed her something. Plans, architectural drawings. "Remember when you told me about your dream, the literacy center?" Her breath caught. Julian, that was just talk. I wasn't expecting. I know, but I've been working on this for weeks. Before the gala, before everything. He swiped through images. There's an old library building in the neighborhood where you teach. It's been abandoned for years. I bought it. You what? I bought it. Had architects draw up plans. It could be a literacy center, library, tutoring space, art studio, room for 200 kids, full funding for 10 years, and a position for director if you want it. After the Bobby, or before, or never. It's yours either way. She stared at the plans through tears. Why? Because you said you didn't want your dreams bought, so I'm not buying them. I'm investing in them. In you, in the kids you'll help, in the future you want to build. He set the phone aside, took her hands. I don't want to give you my world, Lily. I want to help you build yours. This is too much. It's not enough, but it's a start. He pulled a small box from the nightstand drawer, and this is something else. Inside was a ring, not the practical platinum band he'd given her at City Hall, but a sapphire surrounded by diamonds that caught the morning light and threw blue fire. The sapphire matches your eyes, he said quietly. I had it made weeks ago, kept it, not knowing if I'd ever have the chance to give it to you properly. It's beautiful. Lily Monroe Hawthorne, will you stay married to me? His voice was thick with emotion, for real this time. No contract, no timeline, no exit strategy. Just you and me and our daughter and whatever life we build together. She was crying openly now. You're ridiculous. We're already married. Is that a yes? That's an absolutely yes. He slid the ring on beside her wedding band. It fit perfectly, because of course it did. He was thorough. The months that followed were a blur of preparation and joy. Emma recovered fully, started college, visited constantly to pester them about baby names. Natalie remained skeptical but supportive, watching Julian with protective eyes that gradually softened as she saw how he looked at Lily. Victoria's legal challenge fizzled. The board, led by Eleanor Whitmore, released a statement supporting Julian's marriage and succession. Victoria's company failed 6 months later. Julian never mentioned it, but Lily suspected he'd had a hand in ensuring certain business deals fell through. The literacy center took shape slowly. Lily worked with architects and educators, planning every detail. Julian watched her passion bloom, fell more in love with her vision and determination. Their daughter was born on a snowy February morning after 18 hours of labor. Julian held Lily's hand through every contraction, whispered encouragement when she wanted to give up, cried openly when he first held their daughter. They named her Sophie Grace Hawthorne, Sophie for Julian's grandmother, Grace for Lily's mother. She had Lily's hazel eyes and Julian's dark hair, and a cry that suggested she'd inherited both their stubborn wills. 1 year later, the Lily Hawthorne Literacy Center held its grand opening. The old library building had been transformed into a space that was part learning center, part safe haven, part community hub. Bright colors and comfortable furniture, books everywhere, rooms designated for tutoring and art, and just being. Lily stood on the front steps in a simple blue dress, Sophie on her hip, Julian beside her with his hand on her back. Emma was there, healthy and radiant, studying art at NYU. Natalie stood with her husband and their 2 kids, Raymond and his family, Mrs. Chen, who'd brought enough cookies to feed an army. Even Eleanor Whitmore had come, donating a substantial amount and looking genuinely pleased. The crowd was full of kids and parents, teachers and volunteers, people who believed in what this place could become. Can you believe this is real? Lily whispered to Julian. After everything, yes. Sophie grabbed his finger, holding tight. He looked at his daughter with such pure love, it made Lily's chest ache in the best way. Any regrets? She asked. Only that I didn't meet you sooner. We found each other when we needed to. And now we build our life together. The ribbon cutting was simple. Lily made a short speech about second chances and the power of literacy to transform lives, about how her father had learned to read at 12 and books had given him a future, about wanting to give that gift to other kids who needed it. Julian watched her with undisguised pride.
this extraordinary woman who'd walked into his life as a transaction and become the center of his world. After the ceremony, after the tours and congratulations and photographs, they found a quiet moment in what would be Lily's office. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk by the window, comfortable chairs for meetings. "Happy?" Julian asked, shifting Sophie to his other arm. "Completely. You?" More than I knew was possible.
He set Sophie carefully in her carrier, then pulled Lily into his arms. "Thank you." "For what?" "For answering that advertisement, for agreeing to something insane, for giving me a daughter and a life, and a reason to be more than just my grandfather's legacy. Thank you for seeing me as more than ordinary. You were never ordinary, not for a single second." They kissed in her new office, their daughter sleeping peacefully beside them, and the sound of children's laughter drifted from the rooms beyond. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, but inside the Lily Hawthorne Literacy Center, in an office that smelled of new books and fresh paint and possibility, two people who'd started as strangers held each other and marveled at the beautiful complication their lives had become. "I love you," Lily whispered against his chest. "I love you too, always." Sophie made a small sound in her sleep. They both looked down at her, this perfect combination of their genetics and their hope. "Do you think she'll understand someday?" Lily asked. "How we started, the contract and the arrangement and all of it? I think she'll understand that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most beautiful stories." Julian pulled Lily closer, "and that love doesn't care how it starts, only that it's real." "Is it real?" He smiled, kissed her forehead. "Every single day." Through the window, the city sparkled with evening lights. In the main room, volunteers were setting up for tomorrow's first official day. Emma was hanging artwork created by local kids. Natalie was arranging books by reading level. Mrs. Chen was, predictably, organizing the snack area. This was Lily's dream made real. Not by money alone, though Julian's resources had helped, but by vision and determination and the combined effort of people who believed in second chances. Julian's phone buzzed. A message from Raymond. "Board approved your proposal. The Hawthorne Foundation will provide scholarships for kids from the Literacy Center, full ride, preschool through college." He showed Lily the message. She stared at it, then at him, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. These kids deserve the chances you're giving them, and more." She pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like gratitude and joy, and the kind of love that grows stronger through challenges overcome. When they finally left, walking to the car with Sophie bundled against the cold, Lily turned back to look at the building. The sign above the door glowed softly. "The Lily Hawthorne Literacy Center, where every story matters." "What are you thinking?" Julian asked. "That I came into this wanting to save one life, and somehow I ended up building a whole new world. We built it together." Yes, we did. They drove home through streets wet with melting snow, Sophie sleeping in her car seat, the city endless and beautiful around them. The penthouse, when they arrived, no longer felt cold or impersonal. It felt like home, filled with Sophie's toys and Lily's books and the comfortable clutter of actually living. Julian carried their daughter to the nursery while Lily made decaf coffee, still terrible despite months of his patient instruction. He found her in the kitchen, handed her a mug, and pulled her into his arms. "I have something to tell you," he said, his voice carefully neutral. Her heart skipped. "What?" "The inheritance, the trust fund. It unlocked last month when I turned 36. He paused. "I'm giving most of it away." "What? Julian, that was your grandfather's legacy." "My grandfather wanted the family name to mean something, to help people. The patents and properties will fund the Hawthorne Foundation permanently. Scholarships, medical research grants, community programs, things that matter." He cupped her face. "You taught me that legacy isn't about hoarding wealth. It's about what you build with it." "Are you sure?" "Completely. I kept enough to ensure Sophie's future and ours. The rest goes to making a difference." Lily kissed him, pouring everything she felt into the contact.
When they broke apart, she whispered, "Your grandfather would be proud." I hope so, but more importantly, I'm proud of what we're building, of who I'm becoming because of you. They stood in their kitchen, holding each other while their daughter slept down the hall, and felt the weight of their journey, from desperate strangers to reluctant partners to this, love, real and complicated and worth every moment of uncertainty. "Tell me a story," Lily said softly. "What kind of story?" "Our story. The real one. The one we'll tell Sophie someday." Julian smiled, led her to the couch, pulled her into his arms. "Once upon a time, there was a man who thought he had everything figured out. He had money and power and a plan. Then one day, a woman answered an advertisement. A woman who was desperate and terrified and out of options. A woman who was brave beyond measure. She agreed to help him, not knowing she was about to save him, in ways that had nothing to do with contracts or inheritances. They made an arrangement. They made a mess, a beautiful, complicated mess. They pretended to be married when they were strangers, pretended not to care when they were falling in love, pretended they could walk away when they'd already become essential to each other. And then they stopped pretending, chose each other, built a life that was real and imperfect, and exactly what they both needed." Lily tilted her head up to kiss him. "I like that story. It's my favorite, especially the ending." "What ending?" "The one where they live happily ever after, messily and imperfectly, but together, always together." "That's a good ending." "It's not an ending." Julian pulled her closer. "It's just the beginning." Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, in a penthouse that had once been cold and empty, a family existed in the warm chaos of love chosen and earned. Lily fell asleep in Julian's arms, their daughter safe in her nursery, their future uncertain but promising. And Julian held her, this extraordinary woman who'd walked into his life to save her sister and ended up saving him. Sometimes, he thought, the most unexpected arrangements lead to the most beautiful beginnings. Sometimes the wrong path is the only one that leads home. And sometimes falling in love with a stranger is the sanest thing you can do. He pressed a kiss to Lily's hair, felt her sigh contentedly in her sleep, and smiled. They'd started with $1 million offer and a desperate bargain. They'd ended with something priceless, each other. And that, Julian knew, was worth more than any inheritance could ever be.